Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you both doing?
Doing well.
Great. Justin, I know you were on the screen a moment ago. I don't see you now. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this important conversation that we're having. Assemblywoman Latrice Walker will join us shortly. But we are here to have the conversation this evening on divesting and protesting. Divesting and protesting and economic development in our communities. And so I'm here. My name is LaShawn Allen Muhammad, Executive Director, Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, and I will be facilitating the conversation this evening with two powerful brothers, Mr. Keith White, attorney at law, straight out of Brooklyn, and we also have Mr. Justin Cotton from Industrial Bank, I'll let him tell you, but a little bit of a spoiler, our New York City's only Black-owned bank. And so this is going to be an incredible conversation, great information shared, in the spirit of, this being the week of Juneteenth. Actually, Juneteenth is tomorrow. And so, we are very, it's our honor to be here to lend our voices to this conversation of, continue the plethora of information that was shared with everyone throughout the week. And so I just want to thank Assemblywoman Latrice Walker for putting this series together. It's very important. As well as thank Dean Gale behind the scenes, making power moves. So I want to thank you as well. And so again, greetings everyone. So Keith and Justin, to just frame the conversation around what divestment means in the context of protesting and, just kind of like what that means within our communities. Can you discuss what, just give some context around what divestment actually means? Keith, let's start with you.
So first of all, good evening. Thanks for having me to the Assemblywoman. I'm honored. Thank you, LaShawn. Thank you, Justin. I'm honored to be amongst you guys. So the concept of divesting is simply saying that our oppressors are well-financed. And because they're well-financed by us, the people. And so divesting from them is simply saying, I'm no longer going to give you the finances to oppress me. And so whether it's looking at how you bank, right? Looking at something I talk about all the time is the concept of the marketplace, the place of exchange, where we exchange ideas and how we look at what we value. And it's important for us to see our money as an extension of our values, our value system. And so the closer we align our money with our values, then we'll start to see and identify where there's a disconnect, where there's a misalignment, and what leads to our oppression. And so if we look at banks who might invest in redlining, they might invest in practices that are destructive to our community. We need to start looking at why we have our money in these banks,
right,
why we allow them to use our funds to fund our oppression. And so that's a very general, broad look at the divestment framework, right? Then, and I don't want to talk too long. I'll let Justin go, and then we can continue the conversation.
First off, again, I appreciate you all for giving me the time and opportunity to come speak with you all today. Thank you, LaShawn. Thank you, Keith, for just letting me be able to just continue to have the conversation with you. I completely agree with you, Keith. I believe that every dollar that we invest has to come in with a purpose. Like, we have to, every dollar that we spend or save or put into a banking institution, we need to make sure that that bank or that institution is an extension of the values in which we want that dollar to support. We want to make sure that every dollar that we put into an institution, into the community, has a direct effect of positivity in that community. So if you're giving your money to Bank of America or a large-scale national bank, these banks do not have a full footprint. They're present in your community, but they don't have a footprint. They don't have an actual relationship with the community that they're a part of. Your dollar that goes into Bank of America is probably being lent out to somebody in California. They're not. There's no legit connection there. So it's very important that we start, when it comes to divestment. The biggest thing is that we're making this statement that no, we won't support apathy anymore. We won't support causes that don't care about our community, but rather actually supporting and being invested in the community, in the institutions that will affect our community positively.
Thank you so much, Justin. And so we have our phenomenal Assemblywoman Latrice Monique Walker. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank
Good
you
to see
so
you.
much, LaShawn. This is great. I'm excited. I've been doing my homework. I am checking on the investment practices of the state of New York. I'm looking for some really good marching orders. One of the things that I recognize now is that the comptroller has mentioned that he has divested from prisons. He's also divested from fossil fuel. Of course, I'm a big environmental justice person because of the rates of asthma, et cetera, in our local communities. And we know that we were disproportionately affected by the COVID crisis based on all of our health disparities. And so we got a lot more work to do, though, with respect to the bail bondsman. One of the opportunities that I am grateful for is being the sponsor of the bail reform bill. And we saw that police unions, bail bondsmen, et cetera, were very big special interest groups who were working very hard to undo all of the great work that we've done. And we're looking for responsible investing from our state, just like from each and every one of us as individuals. So I'm looking forward to the dialogue. I appreciate everything that you bring to the table, and of course, especially as it relates to us investing in our own and recognizing that the billions of dollars that the state spends every year has to go proportionately to communities of color and particularly to Black people. And so, this is a movement, not a moment, as they say.
That's right.
And Juneteenth has to be as much as it is about freedom from slavery. It has to be about political freedom. It has to be about economic freedom. And without all of these things working hand in hand, we can never really and truly say that we are free. So I know that one of the best quotes that we all use from Harriet Tubman about how many slaves she could have freed if they had all knew they were slaves.
That's
so
right.
I recognize the slavery that I'm in. And I'm looking for the day that we all overcome together. So thank you very much. Thank you for hosting. Thank you for being here. And thank you for everything that you have to bring. And to all of our listeners and viewers, we are happy to have you. This is day 4 of our series, and we're about to be blessed.
Yes, thank you so much, Assemblywoman Walker. We appreciate you and all the work that you are doing. And you didn't hear us. Thank you for putting the series together before you got on, but we just want to say thank you for just presenting this platform and for giving us the opportunity to share. So with that being said, Justin, I want to go to you to just kind of talk a little bit more about Industrial Bank, because I know a lot of people think, especially in New York City, that Carver Bank is our Black-owned bank, right, in New York, and it is not. It is the largest Black-run bank as far as employees, but it is no longer 100% Black-owned. And so Industrial Bank is. Can you give us a little, background about Industrial and even how you came to New York City?
Oh, perfect. I would love to. So, as you are correct. So Carver Bank was bought out by Wells Fargo. So right now, at this time, Industrial Bank is the Black-owned bank in New York and New Jersey. That happened after we recently acquired City National Bank. I believe the merger happened a little bit earlier this year, so the official changeover is happening over the next it's officially happened, but you'll start seeing new signage, things of that nature over the next month or so here. But yeah, so Industrial Bank is now the leading bank in both the New York, New Jersey area and in Washington, D.C. So pretty much we're covering the northeastern portion of the United States right now. Industrial Bank's been around since the 1930s. It's been Black owned throughout. If you go looking onto the website of Industrial Bank, you'll see nothing but pictures of all of our greats, Muhammad Ali, all of those who have come through the DC area have had a connection with Industrial Bank. And we've still had a strong presence in DC. We finance a majority of the Black businesses in the DC area. Your Inns, your Leaf Flowers, all of those different shops that you may have heard of.
Yes.
But a lot of bankers come directly into Industrial Bank. We make sure we have a strong footprint with the community. And so now we're just we brought on we kept on most of the employees from City National Bank. All it was just an acquisition. It's going to be the same tellers that you know, the same people that you know. But now Industrial Bank is the foremost Black-owned bank in both New York, New Jersey, and DC.
Okay, thank you so much, Justin. And from what I understand, it's also not only is it the only bank in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. Black-owned, but it's the fourth largest Black-owned bank in the country. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe the larger one right now is One United, just because they are online and they're across the country.
Yes.
The next one after that, I believe, is Liberty. I'm trying to remember who the third one is. That may be Citizens Trust in Atlanta, and then it would be Industrial Bank.
Right. So that's critical. That's critical. And so, so just going back to the conversation around divestment. So imagine if, we look at and do our research, to your point, Latrice, and we do our research to see which of these financial institutions that we're currently doing business with and depositing our money have ties to the transatlantic slave trade. How many of these banks were started with the resources, that were derived from slavery, right? But we don't know who those banks are, and we continue, so we are also part of the problem. So we have to do our due diligence and do our own research. I believe Chase Bank is one of them, but I would, I don't want to say emphatically that that's who it is, but I believe so. That's what I've read, and so we just have to make sure that we're doing, like I said, our due diligence and making sure that we're moving our resources. In addition to Black-owned banks, there are also credit unions that have been a main stake in our community. So, Keith, can you shed some light on credit unions?
So just to take a step back, yes, J.P. Morgan Chase was one of the funds that helped provide for the transatlantic slave trade. But let me say this. Someone asked a question in the thread, Lisa Bates. She asked a question about how she can invest money that helps her community, but at the same time makes her money. And I think that the concept of credit unions is really around cooperative banking, cooperative economics, and the idea is to create something where we all have a shared value system. And so because we all have a shared value system, we all pool our resources to do something that benefits us in our community. Right. So to that point, credit unions are an alternative to banks, to commercial banks and industrial banks. No shade to you, Justin, but I'm not a big fan of banks. I'm a fan of credit unions for several reasons. One, when you join a credit union, you join a credit union as a shareholder. And so as a shareholder, you have some decision making and you have more agency over your funds. And what I mean by that is when you deposit your money into a bank, the bank has the ability to use those funds. I don't have any other device on, so sorry.
It's better.
Is that better?
That's better. Yes.
Okay. So when you have a what was that? Okay. So when you have an account with a credit union, you're a shareholder at that credit union. And so when you're a shareholder, you have agency. Your money is an extension of your value system. But when you deposit your money into a bank, the bank makes a decision on where to where to take your funds and invest them, where to use your funds and how to use your funds. And with a credit union, you have some voting rights. It depends on how much you want to get involved. And so there's that. There's also the concept that with a credit union, you're essentially an owner. As a shareholder, you're an owner, but at a bank, you're a depositor. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to look at how we show up in the world, right? And if we look at how we show up in the world, that means that we are not just saying, hey, well, these people are over here doing something bad. That has nothing to do with me. No, we're all connected. Right. And if we start paying attention to how we show up in the world, then we start taking responsibility for things that even might be tangentially connected to us. And so that's our money. So where my money is my money is the $500 that I deposited into the bank, is that being used to fund a pipeline that's poisoning my community? Right. Is the $500 that I deposited into the bank, is that being used to fund a police brutality bond? A police brutality bond is a financial tool that banks and hedge funds use to fund cities and to pay for police violence. And essentially what happens is taxpayers pay for these bonds, right? The banks make a profit off of it. And then the police officers are never held financially responsible. And so there are all of these things happening in our community where we're tangentially connected, right? But when we start getting closer to our money and we start taking agency over our economics through cooperative economics, through credit unions where we have shared alignment of interests, then those things can't happen. And that's when you start to, that's the conversation about divesting from a system that oppresses you and investing into a mechanism that empowers you.
I love that, Keith. That is exactly right. And so, as you were speaking, there were several things that came to mind. Number one, protesting, right, and making sure that our dollars are that we're investing our dollars or utilizing our dollars where it benefits us, or we know that if we're investing in a business or we're spending our money somewhere that is actually circulating. So if you look at any community, so my organization is in Brownsville. Assemblywoman Walker represents Brownsville, right? 95% Black and brown people, over 100,000 residents live there. We, the community, I would say, own zero assets, pretty much, right? Or very little assets. And that is, something that we have to really look at, right? If we're talking about divesting, if we're divesting as a community, as a collective, right? Incorporating this cooperative economics model, right? And then begin to invest and purchase real estate and develop businesses, that is also how you create sustainable communities, right? And so going back to the bank for a second, what is a CRIA? Am I saying this right? Community Reinvestment.
Yes,
right?
The CRA. Yeah.
Right. And so that is supposed to be, that's a policy or a law, right? That is supposed to ensure that the banks that are in certain communities that they are investing back into the community, right? But as you know, most are not. And so can you talk a little bit about industrial banks, CRA or CRA?
The CRA. There's no I. Okay. No worries. I would love to speak to it. And to Keith's point, I'm very much understanding that. So for banks, the only true difference between banks and credit unions at the lower level, when we're talking about the credit unions and your local community bank, is the difference between the nonprofit structure and the for-profit structure. Now, when you have a credit union, you have the ability for everybody to come together, and those assets are pooled, and then everybody's able to dip from that pool and be able to build up safe checking accounts, things of that nature. I support credit unions too. The positive about a bank institution, though, when you're talking about a community, not the large scale ones, is that you also have the ability to go and put leverage on a particular person. They're a little bit more structured and organized in a way where if you wanted to go to the president of Industrial Bank and say, hey, we need to make sure that we're doing or investing in this project, he has to listen to you because, one, your dollar means a lot more to him than it does to Bank of America down the street. Right. And then also his community stakeholders and the board of directors are made up of community members themselves. And so there's a strong vested interest of the smaller community banks to be a part of the community more so than the large banks. So I have, like I said, I have nothing against credit unions. I support them fully. I think any Black institution that we have an opportunity to support is where we need to be putting our focus on and get away from this large scale banking and think more towards, you need to know who your banker is. You need to know about your bank. You need to be able to feel and relate to the person that's sitting across from you. So, but with that being said, when it comes to CRA affects the bigger banks more than it does the community banks and the lower banks for that very reason. Because the CRA was developed to hold large scale banks accountable to the communities that they serve when it comes to lending, redlining, things of that nature. So when they put out CRA, it says that you have to submit a certain amount of money to a certain community for you to be able to hit a certain score. That's why you'll see so many of your banks reaching out to the NAACP, the Urban League, all of those like large scale Black organizations, because they need a funnel of Black candidates to be able to fill a score. It's almost like affirmative action for them. For CRA actually doesn't mean anything to us as a community bank because our community is so Black, it never really comes up. We get 100% most of the time because not most of them, all the time, because we're only serving our local community. We don't have that issue, so we don't have to worry about CRA. That's a Bank of America Chase Wells Fargo situation.
Thank you for that clarification, Justin. And that's wonderful. And so, I'm going to make a shameless plug here. My introduction to City National Bank is when they were located in Brooklyn. They were on Atlantic Avenue in Vermont Street, I want to say, in East New York for 15 years. For 15 years, right? They actually owned that building. And so that's a great example of, just some of the directions that, as I mentioned before, that we need to go in. Not only do we need to expand and open more businesses through local residents, but we also need to own the real estate. I cannot stress that enough. And so because so now here's the challenge with the smaller community banks. They're, the large marketing budgets that Chase have, you see commercials everywhere. City National, so that's why this cooperative relationship is really important, because if the community banks don't have large numbers of depositors, they don't have the extra resources to market, to let everyone know what they're doing, right? And so as a result, the City National had to sell the building, right? They had to sell that asset in order to, I guess, maintain, but that even still wasn't enough. And so even though I'm making a shameless plug to come back to Brooklyn, right?
No, I got you. No worries. It's on the docket. No worries.
But what I want to say though is the important, so as a small nonprofit organization, it was great to have a bank, right next door pretty much, right, where we can easily get to East New York. But when that building was sold and the bank, sort of the only space that was available was in Harlem, we maintained our account. So we migrated to make sure we were using the online platform. It works most of the time. No, it's great. But there's something about having this Black-owned bank in our backyard that was it just felt good, and one day, and I just, want to share that a group of, other organizations and residents, we actually held a community walk. And we started at our building at 444 Thomas Boylan. That's where Central Brooklyn is located. And we got together, and another person that we know drove from Pennsylvania he drove his car 2 hours to meet us at 444, and we walked over to City National Bank just so that they can open accounts. And that was a way to, sort of protest. Like, we are taking our resources out of whatever bank we were participating in, and we walked. So that movement that Latrice, that Assemblywoman Walker talked about, that's the thing that we have to really start doing with purpose, right? With intention, our money, organizing, our own community walks to the banks, and we're going to show up in a group and open up. That's powerful. And so, Keith, can you talk a little bit about, just some other examples of protesting with your dollars and cooperative economics and what that, just give us some examples.
So when I was in so in 2016, we took my wife and kids. We went to the pipeline, the protest in Dakota, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we were there, we met an indigenous elder who told us that, in this society, especially in American society, we all exact some level of privilege over someone else. And the way that the idea is not necessarily to become an ally, but the idea is to recognize your privilege so that you're creating equity.
Right.
So, so the framework for divesting, the framework for investing in things that actually are in alignment with your value system is about weaponizing your privilege, taking whatever it is that you've gained from society and putting it into vehicles and tools that will further be in alignment with what you are thinking about, what you're dreaming about, and what you're hoping for the future. And so when it comes to, I've talked about police brutality bonds, right? But then when we talk about we talk about 401ks and IRAs, right? People may feel like, well, what do I do with those, right? Like, what do I do? Those are funds that I don't really know what to do with. There's something called impact investing, and it's something that the idea behind impact investing is that you invest in something where there's a social good directly tied to the return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
So far, impact investing is become really popular recently, and impact investing yields just about the same returns as traditional investing. And impact investing might mean going to your financial advisor, going to the person who's administering your 401k or your IRA, and saying to them, "Hey, I want to get into an impact investment, something that's maybe a public-private partnership that provides homes for communities that where houselessness is an issue. I want to invest in investment opportunities that might be providing education in communities where there is an achievement gap. And there are investment opportunities here, and it's important for us. It's not just like I know that the idea is to kind of like invest in like the stock market when you feel like it's low, so you can catch it on the way up. But really being a savvy, intelligent investor is not necessarily about following trends, but it's really about value investing. And value investing is not like a speculative thing, like, oh, I think something's going to go up. I'm going to invest in tissue because everyone's running out and buying toilet tissue. But why is everyone running out to buy toilet tissue? Because there's a social ill, there's a societal ill that's happening, right? And now you have an opportunity to invest in a vehicle that cures the societal ill. And so I would encourage people to look up impact investing and look at specific impact investments that are public-private partnerships to help society move forward.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Justin, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely think that when you're investing or whatever you're putting your dollar to, there should be a social conscious part of it. You should definitely know that whatever you're doing, whenever you're investing or choosing an investment good, you know that the externalities of that decision are going to be positive for your community. I will say you don't have to necessarily go as deep as impact, when it comes to impact investment and things like that. I try to keep it simple for people. The idea is that if you save money at a bank or at a community institution, you know that those funds at minimum are going to be lent out and sent to people in your community. If you put in money, if you save, there are 37 million African Americans in this country. If we all were to save $200, that's literally you saving $200 in an investment account for long term, being able to see the returns for yourself, keeping money for yourself, that would actually translate to $7.4 billion. Currently, all of our financial institutions in the United States only have 4.7. So that's something that simple of making a decision that I am going to take my assets, save them at a community bank, and hold on to them for the long term. Whatever my next purchase may be would have such a strong impact for your community than just spending, instead of just spending dollar to dollar. Just something that simple. You don't think it's a lot, but it makes so much of a difference if we all do it collectively.
So I'm glad you said that, Justin. Right, and but one thing that you said that struck me when you said that if you deposit a certain amount, that this programs or whatever is going to be supported, right? But that is the problem. Most of us don't know what the banks are doing, right, with their with the financing, which is why I just want to emphasize the importance of having a relationship with the community bank, where you can walk in and have these conversations where the community bank is transparent, right, and you can literally see their footprint or imprint in the community. One of our listeners or spectators, one of our family members that's here tonight, right?
I like that.
Yeah, posted a question just now about youth. How do we teach our young people about wealth building? How do we do that? So that's one of the ways that a community bank or credit union can also give back into the community. Support and collaborate with community-based organizations like Central Brooklyn, to offer classes. We do offer Central Brooklyn entrepreneurship classes. We run after-school programs, but those are examples of some of the things that a community bank, and that's the reason why we need more community banks in our community, so that you see that that exchange, right, and it's transparent. The question that came up for me, we're in the midst of this global civil unrest, right? And everyone is, we're renaming streets, we're painting streets, Black Lives Matter. Everyone is investing or donating, right? You're hearing about the amounts of money that is being donated to the cause, but we don't see where's the money landing, right? How do you know that, so I guess the question that I had is, have either of you heard about where those investments are going? As someone who works with Industrial Bank, is Industrial Bank a recipient of any of these, investments that will help spark more community lending? I'm just trying to get a sense of, following the trail. Keith,
So I think the concept of philanthropy, which is what this is, right?
Yes.
These are not investments. These companies are not investing. They're providing philanthropy, and it's my belief, get it from Franz Fanon, but I believe that philanthropy is a tool of oppression, right? I'm going to take everything from you, and I'm going to give you back some pennies so that you're thankful. It'll help ease my guilt. Thankful, and it maintains, it crystallizes the nature of our relationship, that you always need something from me. And so my issue with what the conversation is, it's all gestures, right? You've taken 400 years of labor. You've taken 150 years of cultural development, right? You've commodified it, you've monetized it, you've profited off of it, and now to the tune of trillions of dollars. And now you want to say, hey, we'll give you $10 million and we're gonna pick the organizations, right? We're gonna create some committee, right? But we're gonna pick who we're giving some of this money to. For me, that's not consistent with progress. That's not consistent with a human rights value that we're talking about when we say Black Lives Matter, right? So for me, it's a gesture. It's cute, but it's not anything. And I hope that we keep our foot on the gas.
Yes,
I would say proverbial as well. And I think that's important. Now, when it comes to where that money is going, like I said, they're picking social justice organizations that will provide them with cultural cachet, right? They're going to place them in places where they can continue to look like the good guys and look like they're investing in a community where they're not really. And I think that, I'm from Brownsville. Right? I grew up, born and raised. I know what needs, Sean, what needs to happen in Brownsville in terms of resources, education, right? We know coding, all of the things that need to come into Brownsville, right? But the conversation is, hey, we're going to invest in these partnerships, these relationships between police and the community. What needs to, the idea is the police are already well funded, right? So that's not a need, right? There's not a need for a conversation between the community and the police at this point. There's a need for police to learn, sit and listen, right? If they still need to exist, right? I'm an abolitionist, so I don't even believe in the need for police as they exist today. But I think that's the conversation around divestment, and that's the subtext to divestment. So when we talk about divestment, I don't even allow philanthropy to be part of my framework. Philanthropy is a tool of oppression.
I'm glad you said that. And so, because a lot of people don't, don't necessarily make that connection. So thank you for raising that, Keith. Justin?
Oh, I'm definitely falling in line with Keith on this one, but I will say that, so the money's there. What I've heard is when we see these influx of philanthropy, money, dollars into the community, usually what gets played is the hits. They go to the NAACP, they go to the Urban League, they go to, and don't get me wrong, I mean, we have, those organizations do great work. I think one of the biggest things we need to do to be able to fully maximize what's coming in as far as philanthropy is making sure that, one, our organizations are on the same page. And I mean that in the sense that we hold them to a level of accountability where $1 to the NAACP doesn't get you the voice of the African American community, but rather you would have to do so in a collective way in which everybody knows what the line is. Everybody knows that if you get the endorsement of the Urban League, the NAACP, or just your local level community organization, these criteria need to be met. And if we are able to build that up and build some trust in our own institutions to make sure that we're on the same page, when that money comes in, who cares if they give us some, money? Who cares who's giving it or how they give it, as long as we utilize it for ourselves and we know that nobody's buying us for what they're putting into it.
Right. That's right. And so we have a question. How can we take our economic power, and how do we have this power to support candidates that really represent change in our community? And so I think that speaks, I'm going to, ask you both to answer that question. But, I think that also speaks to having an infrastructure, right? What are our community infrastructures to make sure that, number one, that there is an economic strategic plan? What is the plan, right? How do we create, internal or on the ground institutions to make sure that when these investments come in, that they truly support and sustain our communities, right? And one of the things, so anyway, I have something else I want to add to that, but if you can answer that question, Keith and Justin.
So I think that one of the things, something that's really underutilized in our community, are community board meetings. I can't stress it enough. Community board meetings are so important, because when you join your community board and when you join those committees, right, every developer that's coming into your community, they've got to go through if they're making certain changes to the landscape of the community, they have to do something called the ULERP. When developers are coming in, or banks or certain companies are coming in to change the landscape or the footprint of the community, they have to go through the community board. That's your opportunity. So if you have a coalition of people who are vested in the community, right, and you can go to the community board meeting and represent their interests, you can set up a voting block. You can actually raise your voice in the space where it actually means something. So I think community board meetings are really important, and we need to really show up to them.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Keith. That I totally agree. And so for those of you who are listening or watching, not everybody even knows where their community board is, what community board they belong to. So for those of you who may not know, you can simply Google what community board does this zip code cover, right? So just type in your zip code and it will literally, Google is amazing. You can find anything on there. And it'll tell you what community board where you reside, what covers your area. And so Keith is absolutely correct. And there are monthly meetings, and then there are also committee meetings, right? And so that's the other thing that we need to be a part of. We have committees where we can literally, because community board members are appointed, right? You have to apply and you have to be appointed. And I believe that happens every 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. But you can at any time join the committee. And so, there's committees on education, committees on land use, there's committees on public safety. And so anything where you may have an expertise or just a passion about something, definitely join your community board. So thank you for raising that point, Keith. Justin?
I would just echo that and just say that think small. One of the biggest things is that sometimes we overthink the process. We think we need to change New York when really you just need to change your block. And if we just focus in on that concept, if you think about imagine just everybody working together to become homeowners. Now you become homeowners, now you all are taking over the HOA. HOA now has the power to work with the developer. You get to determine what's coming into the neighborhood, how things are going to move forward. Every small step that you make in a positive fashion can have momentous changes as long as we do it together and we know we're staying on the right path working together.
That's right. Justin, can you please explain what an HOA is?
Homeowners Association.
Okay, good. So we try really hard not to speak in acronyms, right? So
yeah, I got it. I catch me whatever I do.
No, we live in a world of acronyms. I do it all the time, but I just want to make sure that we're very clear. One of the things I was going to, just think about as a framework. So a few years ago, probably about 7, 8 years ago, I started a blog talk show called Black Reconstruction, right? And the idea of Black Reconstruction, literally the idea or the premise was looking at the blueprint of those independent Black communities that were developed post-slavery, right? And so there was a 7-year period after slavery ended. So, right, and I bring this up because we are in the season of Juneteenth. And, Juneteenth is, pretty much the commemoration of that day that the slaves or ex-slaves in Galveston, Texas, were notified 3 years after the abolition of slavery. And so that's what Juneteenth represents. So in that context, right, just looking at where we were as Black people at the end of slavery and supported through the Freedmen's Bureau to, so we didn't get the 40 acres and a mule, but we did receive, somewhat of some support by the Freedmen's Bureau to develop, right? And so these independent communities were established and, maintained for a short while, but because of this systemic oppression, right, that we've been experiencing since we've gotten here, these communities were torn down, right? Like the main one that we all talk about is Black Wall Street, right? The Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, Oklahoma. But you had Rosewood, Florida. You had Durham, I believe, North Carolina. There were many communities like that were independent. What we need to do, so that was the reason why I started this blog talk show, just to kind of let's look back, right? Pull on the Sankofa idea is, if you don't look back, you can't go forward. And so we were independent. We were economic. We had an economic ecosystem, right? And they were destroyed by these, external factors. So now, present day, you look at Brownsville, right, Keith, and East New York, predominantly Black and brown, right? So we are already segregated, right? We're already living in this concentrated area. How do we recreate that idea of an independent Black community, right? Where we are the owners of the assets, like, so that's the conversation that we also need to start having in this space, right? And so, can you add to that?
So I think that the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be a commitment to healing. Our communities are so damaged that we spend a lot of time damaging each other. And so there has to be a significant commitment to healing. Also, there needs to be a significant commitment to bridging intergenerational gap. Because there is, what happened in the 60s and the 70s is we saw a Medgar get killed, assassinated, we saw Malcolm get assassinated, we saw Martin get assassinated, and we saw Fred Hampton get assassinated, right? So when we saw our leaders being assassinated, right, what it did is it sent a chilling message to Black leaders, Black people, late 70s, 80s, right? That where there was a void in the types of Black leadership that was necessary. And so right now, right now there's a gap. There's a generational gap between our generation and the generations below us or younger than us. And I think that there needs to be a commitment to that, because what's happening is, and we see it in the conversation between J. Cole and No Name and some of the other stuff that's happening, right? We're seeing where our issues we're not seeing or we're not hearing one another. So in Brownsville, for example, right, there are alliances being formed, kids in gangs, right? Gangs are framed as a terrible thing because historically, right, that's what we've been programmed to think. But alliances are not a terrible thing. The idea of having a group of friends that you can call on is not a terrible thing. And I think that we need to start reframing our conversations within our community based on our own language. The thing that was taken from us when we were brought here is our language, our deities, our ability to communicate in a way that was endemic to our DNA. And so we've been programmed, we've accepted a way of thinking, a way of life, right? A framework for thought, right? That basically judges everything that we do. We judge everything that kids underneath us do. And I think that that's broadening a generational gap that needs to close. And so in Brownsville, there needs to be a group of OGs that speak to young guys. There needs to be a group of young guys that are speaking to that are speaking to women, right? And speaking to them in a way that's healthy, right? But there's so much damage in our community. And I think that a commitment to healing, a commitment to intergenerational and gender identity gaps will be key to us having the types of conversations that move us forward.
Justin, can you add to that?
I would say that what I really would like to see, what we really need to do as a community, I believe, it needs to be comfortable again being revolutionary, but kind of in a different way. I think we kind of forget how powerful the small steps that we take are. It's revolutionary to be a homeowner for the first time in your family. It's revolutionary to be the first one to go to college, to be the first one to graduate from college. All these small steps that we need, that we sometimes are starting to take for granted. I think we need to take a moment, really value those positions, look to do something differently or do something outside of the norm that we're not necessarily comfortable with when it comes to being a first time business owner. Taking that step outside of your box that you're kind of comfortable in, and then using that as a linchpin, as an anchor to kind of build other people on along with you. I think we get into this mode of despair. We get into this mode of seeing things of just being beaten down, kind of just seeing how hard it is going to be to get to where we need to go, that we cut ourselves short. We don't take a moment to explore, to celebrate our successes, and we don't see the value in the small steps that we take and how those big things, making that next step for our family, can mean so much. So if we all come together, working together to be able to be homeowners, business owners, to be able to move on to that next thing, we should celebrate it, put that win out there as a template for everyone to follow, hold fast to it, and if we move forward in that fashion, I think we will see changes.
Can I just I just want to push back just a little bit and say that I think my point is, and I don't know that, I think that one of our issues is capitalism. And I don't know that capitalism or Black capitalism is the cure for capitalism. And so I do think that I'm happy to, I mean, I know we're running out of time, but I'm happy to engage in that conversation, right? To have, because I think that that's really, really, really important conflict for us, right?
Yes.
It's getting, Black people have been, there are Black people who've been getting money, owning homes for a long time, right? And that hasn't necessarily moved the needle or solved the problem for us. And I think that we don't have a crisis. I think there's several crises that we have, but one of our crises is a crisis of values. What do we value? Why do we value what we value? And I'm not sure. And I know that economics is an important part of any type of empowerment, but I just don't know that the economic system that we're currently subscribed to and the thing that we're seeking to get wealth is the thing that's actually going to get us there.
I can understand your point. My pushback on it would just simply be we are where we are, and so the idea that it's kind of I hear you as far as needing to change the system and trying to move things to a new form or a new way. But there's so many changes that would need to happen for that to occur that I would almost feel as though we'd be doing a disservice to those we could help right now by thinking that way. If we don't take the ball for where we are, we don't pick up the ball on the court that we're playing, then spending the entire time trying to change the game board is going to leave a lot of people out of state. If we can get to a position of power playing in the game we are in, and then use that to leverage for changes, that's a different story. But for right now, I would still say that we just need to take the avenues that we have in front of the things that we can control, and then use that to be able to leverage things for later.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, both of you make excellent points. And, just thinking about the, Keith, what you said about the healing that has to happen. The first episode of Black Reconstruction, I actually called it mental migration, right? Because if the mindset of our community, if we're not on one accord, right, and we don't all pretty much kind of set up in our minds that we are moving in a certain direction, then it's not going to happen, right? And so there's been years and actually more than 400 years. So I also want to, correct that 1619 date that's been floated around is actually 1555, right? So it's been, more than, 401 years that, we've been here in America. So I just wanted to correct that for the record. But that's critical, right? We have to make sure that we are incorporating and embracing that healing component. That's very necessary, right? That's pretty much why that was part of the strategy, to keep that knee on our neck, to keep that trauma, going. And where we now the neck, if, even when they take the knee off the neck, we're doing it to ourselves. Right. And so, all of that, has to be part of the process. So yes, small baby steps, but also just constantly working towards that strategic goal and strategic plan, I should say, to move us forward and into that, out of the capitalistic system that currently exists, right? Because it doesn't work. It wasn't meant for us. That's what we need to understand. This capitalistic system was not meant for us. We were meant to fuel it, which is what we did. Right. So at this point, where do we go from here? And I don't mean to take that from Oprah.
I think that we need to revolutionize the place of exchange. And so I referenced the marketplace earlier. What I meant by that is, and where we come from, right? Many of us come from in terms of indigenously, right? The place of exchange was the marketplace. And in the marketplace, right, you brought your very best to the marketplace because you expected to get your very best in exchange. That was the humanity of the marketplace. Right? When we were stolen from our native land, right? And when much of our value system was bastardized. And so now we came into a value system where when you come to the marketplace, you come with the least, right? And you expect to try to get the most from somebody. That's the idea, right? We're all trying to exploit each other. I'm trying to pay the least amount for the greatest amount of value, right? And that's the marketplace that we currently exist in. And so I know I talk these big ideas, but we've got to talk big ideas, right? We can act locally, but we got to think globally. And so we got to start thinking about the marketplace in a different way. And thinking about the marketplace in a revolutionary way says, you know what? I'm not accepting the value system that I've inherited, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that when and it has to be something where we go. This is like evangelizing, like a principle of values, right? Going around and saying, when you start exchanging with your people, when I exchange with other people, whether they look like me or not, but especially Black people, right? Yeah. Something that I'm stressing. I'm giving you my best, right?
Yes.
Your best. Let's revolutionize the place of exchange, right? And once we start doing that in conversations, in trade, in barter, in banking, once we start doing that, we bring humanity back to the marketplace. Once we bring humanity back to the marketplace, our interactions with one another are different. And I think that that's a global idea, right? It's something we can do. I think to Justin's point, it's something we can do locally, right? In how we bank, in how we barter, in how we shop, in how we buy, right? And I think I think that's a step.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I can hear that point, and I'll just say that I think boiling it all the way back down, we do need to be back to doing business for one another. We can't have any, we can have our discussion, we can have our argument, but if we're not sitting at the table together, then this whole thing's for naught anyway. So that's the biggest point. But you want to save Black, you want to spend Black, you want to make sure that we have in commerce with one another, so we can frame how we're going to do business. We decide how we do business. And then once we build each other up with enough strength, then we can start affecting the changes around us, around in other communities and things of that nature. So I'm in agreement with that. And I think that's where I'll leave.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's important. It's important. And, and it's not just conceptual, right? And I think that most people are looking for, what that infrastructure, what does that liberation look like, right? Because that's what when you were speaking, Keith, that's what I was hearing, from you, right? Like this revolution is our liberation, right? And that's what we are, talking about right now, in this season of Juneteenth. How are we going to build, support, and sustain the liberation of Black people in America?
It's got to be. I think that we have to get prepared to be uncomfortable. What I mean by that is when Ms. Colvin initiated the Montgomery bus boycotts, right? That was an uncomfortable place to be for those domestic workers who are walking miles a day to work.
Right.
And so I think that one of the issues with our current space is that we're relatively comfortable.
Yes.
Right. And so we're relatively comfortable with many of the oppressions that are put upon us until somebody actually hits us in the head and says, "Hey, that's oppression." Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The idea that you're telling someone that they can give you a nickname instead of pronouncing your name is oppression. Come on. All of these things that we kind of got used to accepting are oppression. So I say that to say that I believe that we have to be prepared to get uncomfortable. Uncomfortable meaning we have to be prepared to bank someplace that doesn't have a branch on every corner, right? And that's what a lot of people who reach out to me on this issue say, well, where am I going to put my money? Like, what if I need it like immediately? And I think that's where that's the rub for me. It's like you got to be uncomfortable because that's part of a protest, right? A protest is not just being in the street or marching and having white people cheer you on because this is the moment, right? Protesting is actually doing the thing that's uncomfortable and unpopular, and so, so it's where you banking someplace that may not be as convenient, right? But it's actually that's the thing that's gonna give you generational wealth and cachet with your culture. Right. And I think that's something we have to be prepared to do. We have to be prepared to be uncomfortable and not shopping places that, that might be the most convenient, because you know what? They're causing destruction in our community. And I think that if we can commit to being uncomfortable for a greater cause, right, then we'll realize the benefits of freedom and liberation later. Freedom is the hardest master you'll ever work for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Justin, would you like to add to that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the biggest steps we can make is in that same spirit, going back to our institution, focusing on our institutions. We need to build up and develop our institution and go through the pains and struggles of what that looks like. One of the biggest failings of integration was that we went out there, we learned these new ways, new development. That's what it was all about. But then instead of going out and bringing that back home, we stayed out in the wilderness. We took that, we got a chance to go to Mayberry, and we stayed in Mayberry and didn't bring any of those resources and understanding back home to build our own institutions and foundations. We have to get back to that. It makes no sense for our best athletes all to be going to non-HBCU. It makes no sense for our best employees not to be working for our Black businesses. We have to get back to thinking with that same mindset, get back to focusing on our institutions, building those up, and then we get to decide how they operate because they're supported by us, not by outside influences, not by someone lining their pocketbooks, but literally they are accountable to the community and the foundations that's holding them together, and they have to act and build business accordingly. It builds, it grows, and then as we open that up and allow people to take part in that, that's how we'll fundamentally change the systems around us.
Right, you're right. No, absolutely. And it's interesting because, when I think about that time, right, and that transition from, segregation to so-called integration, which was, the biggest mistake. And I think that, Martin Luther King, I do know, just based off of some of his last speeches, he knew that it was a mistake, right? And so, it's not that we left the communities and didn't, come back and bring back the resources. Our communities were destroyed. They wanted to continue to capitalize off of our brilliance, off of our skill sets, off our minds, right? And it's like that's one of the, the other, greatest, I think, tragedies of us being here, right? We were, the original people of this planet, right, are the best human resource out there, right? And it's like everybody else knows it but us, right? So we've been conditioned to think a certain way, right? We've been conditioned to be, as you said, Keith, comfortable with this. There's no way that this should ever be comfortable, right? But we are, because there's a conditioning that happened, and so we have to sort of, and that's like any process, the birth process is painful. Take it from me. I have 4 children. Oh my God. And but on the serious note, it's just it's time, and and I know those of you who may not, why is she wearing that, right? So I am in the Nation of Islam. My husband is a minister. He's the Brooklyn representative of Mosque 7C, and the whole point, or the purpose, I should say, not point, the purpose of the establishment of the Nation of Islam is to create a nation within a nation for Black and brown people, right? And so we are coming up on the 90th anniversary. July 4th, actually, is the anniversary of the start of the Nation of Islam. And, there is, so that process was lengthy, like 90 years. That's almost a century, right? And we still have a long ways to go. But, the minister, and I bring this up because the minister, if you look at the back of the Final Call newspaper, one of the statements is, we want land of our own, right? We want territory in this country, right? And so that whole separation process is painful, right? It's not going to be comfortable. So, I bring that up to say that there are, and have been many philosophies. Back in the day, we had Booker T. Washington promoting the trades, right, with Tuskegee University and the agriculture, and he was right. We had W.B. Du Bois, with the academia and the talented. He was right. They were both right, and I think that that's an issue that we as a community have to really understand. That's why we are all made wonderfully unique, right? And so for some, they will be going on to college and becoming, those, intellectuals and writing our laws and becoming our, lawyers, Keith, and what have you, our bankers, Justin, right? But you also need to have the farmers that are equally important. Not one is better than the other. They are all necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that and keep that and understand that it all works for our greater good and our liberation, back to that point. And so, yeah, it's not going to be comfortable. So I know that
I argue that the farmers and the laborers are actually more important, because they've been the lifeblood of all development.
Yes.
So you could have people sitting around theorizing. We could be as smart as we want, right? But without people actually out laboring, right, we have nothing. And so I that's just my personal thing.
Yes. And it's all important. Not everybody, so that's why, we all have our unique gifts and talent. We were all, blessed with that. And so I was, given direction. I need to make sure that we have about maybe 20 minutes. And I also want to announce that, this is, as I stated earlier, part of the Assemblywoman Walker's Juneteenth week of workshops and, virtual sessions. But this is all leading up to a larger Juneteenth event that's happening this Saturday. And this is being produced by Mojo Events, Athenia Rodney. And it's going to be an all-day event from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that information will be shared. If someone in the back office can give me a website, I'll share it with everyone. But we want to make sure that we all stay connected. Those of you who are viewing for the first time, stay connected. That's what's going to move this train forward. That's what we have to make sure we stay connected and continue to support each other. Justin and I met over a year ago, at a dinner in Brooklyn. And so we have friends in common, but this is actually the second time that I've seen him, right? And so, but I knew who to call. For the N on Black banking. And Keith and I, we're connected now, right? Through Nadine. And so these are things, we have to make sure that we are developing those relationships. And back to what you said a little earlier, Justin, on our blocks, just starting. And one of the things I like to look at is what does my, as an individual look like, right? What does my development look like? And then, as a family, and then as a block, as a neighborhood, and that's how you make impact.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
No, and so I would just say, to kind of get to it's kind of a little bit more towards like directive and what's the next step and action and things like that. I think one of the first steps we can really take is looking at, again, when it comes to just, I'm going to speak from the, the banking standpoint, just from my background here. I think one of the smartest things we can do is just, like I said, if we all put $200 into a savings account long term, that would double the assets of our community institutions. And so if we were to just all to commit to long-term savings, it's really about how you back bank. One of the biggest issues that we had with I think about 5 years ago, we had the Black Banking Challenge. And it was a great movement. People were lined up. Things where everybody was opening up checking accounts. It was great. The problem is everybody opened up checking accounts and then didn't use the accounts, closed the accounts. And so it was a flash in the pan, but it wasn't sustainable. And I get it. I trust me, as a college student, I've $25 for a checking account was tough too. Trust me, I get it. But I challenge everybody to say this. You spend your Netflix. Netflix is like $15.99 a month. So if you were to just say, okay, I'm either going to meet my Netflix bill or I'm going to cut Hulu out instead of having both, and just literally take that $15 every month and just save it at a community institution, whether it's bank, whether it's a bank or whether it's a credit union. Just make that decision and decide I'm going to save money for myself, because that you're going to accrue interest on that money. You're going to be able to grow some wealth for yourself, but then you'll also know that any money that you put into the bank or the finance is going to go out to the community. Banks work on capital. Whatever money they have in, they lend out. That's how they. So the more money that they have in their account, the more money they can give out for loans for homes, businesses, and things like that. So if we were to commit to that, we could see a huge change. And then I would challenge us also to get with all of our community organizations and make them draft a letter and a commitment to the bank. So the bank is going to make sure it meets certain needs for those communities as well. I think we're also going to be very strong about holding our institutions even to a higher level of accountability. And I think that would be a strong way to show, one, our institutions are solid, we're going to support them, and they're being held to the community. It'd be a good way for over the next year. I would love by the next June, the next Juneteenth, that we'd have over $1 billion saved in our community banks.
So, on that note, before you add to that, Keith, so Justin, so why don't we do this right now, right? As part of this whole Juneteenth week of activities, right? Leading up to, well, tomorrow's actually Juneteenth, but why don't we do that, right? And so, of course, I'm still saying bring Industrial Bank to Brooklyn, right? So what does that look like, right? So I don't know if Rochelle was the one who asked the question about, and so the plan is, because I love that. I love that plan, right? So how do we create a, bring Industrial to Brooklyn fund? I'm joking, but that whole movement, tonight, for those who are listening, I see that they're asking for a Black bank list. So they're only about, I'm sorry, I don't want to, let me finish my sentence. So if we can come up with some kind of actionable item tonight that we can, that will say how we can support Industrial Bank, but something very specific to Brooklyn or maybe Brownsville, since this is Assembly Woman Walker's platform. But what would something like that look like? And I don't want to put the pressure on you right now, but I do understand, the listeners and the viewers asking, okay, so what's the plan, right? You all, what are we going to do, right? It's great to hear, it's good information, but what are we going to do? So before, let's think about that a little bit. In regards to the Black bank list, I don't know, Nadine, if you can put up an email address, we can share it with the viewing audience and then send them the list, because I think there's about 22 left. Am I not mistaken? Is it?
There's actually a few more. So the simplest way to do it would be go to the NBA, so the National Bankers Association. The National Bankers Association is the organization over Black banks throughout the country. Now that doesn't mean that every Black bank is a part of the NBA. It's just the quickest way to get to a list that's going to be managed well. The next one would probably be, I think One United has a list available as well. If you just Google it, be one of the first ones that come up, and it'll have a list. It has the last time I checked it, it was pretty accurate as well. So those are two options that you can go to find a local bank in your area. Okay,
National Banking Association?
Bankers Association.
National Bankers Association. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Okay, no, and I guess to the original point, I guess the first, when it comes to being able to, the easiest way to do this would be do it online. So basically, right now we're Industrial Bank just moving in, so we still have some time to get it. We still have to put some money in to get the location open in Brooklyn. But one of the quickest way while we're still getting, so people can go ahead and have an action item for now, would be to take whether it's $100 or $200 and open up a savings account that you are going to use to save money in. Doesn't mean that you for a year's time whether you're going to buy a flight for next year's Christmas, or whether you're going to make a purchase you're going to make sometime in the future. Putting that money aside today and putting it in a community bank. If you could do, like I said, $200 it's just a number that I have just because I know at 7.4 billion how momentous that would be. But if we could just commit to something, whether it's $100 or $50, even for to open a savings account, and just keep that money, knowing you're going to keep that money in there for a year's time. And then I would say if we could also challenge any of the organizations as a part of that, who are doing something in a lump sum way, or they're doing something, if everybody's coming together, you also submit that with a letter challenging the bank to make sure that you're hitting a certain level of needs, whether it's being able to provide better rates for mortgages, whether it's saying that you're going to do more for a certain community activity. Literally have that letter, draft that letter in relation to the large scale savings that you're putting into, and then leverage the bank that way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Keith?
So I think an action item for me is to, one, identify a credit union that that you believe in terms of is aligned with your interests. I think you can find credit unions are insured just the way that banks are through the National Credit Union Association, NCUA. And so find a credit union where you can do cooperative, where you can practice cooperative economics. The other thing that I would do is I would remove all money from JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. If maybe 50% of the Black people in America withdrew their free institutions and invested in credit unions or some practice of cooperative economics, we'd see fundamental changes to the economic system. I think that those are, they sound like simple steps, but I know that they're not comfortable.
Right. And the action item that that I would add is for those who are interested in becoming a homeowner, whether it be next week, next year, or 2 years from now, to go to NACA.com, NACA.com. They are, I think, one of the nation's best first-time home buyers programs. We are actually have a representative that is connected to our office in Brooklyn, so that when we reopen, we will have a NACA counselor that will be able to support Brooklyn residents instead of having to go all the way to New Jersey, right? I know they do a lot of counseling on the phone, but there's nothing like that one-to-one counseling. So I would say if that's something that you're interested in, as far as a wealth building strategy, becoming a homeowner, and that doesn't just mean a home. It can be a co-op or a condominium. Go to NACA.com, sign up for a workshop, and start the process. So that's my item.
And LaShawn, if I can just add, so in Industrial Bank, because we're coming into the area, we won't be fully able to do residential mortgages for the next 60 days, but we'll be able to start as early as anybody purchasing a home next year will be able to get a loan through Industrial Bank for the first home as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I just want to quickly add to the point of credit unions not necessarily being comfortable. I do want to say this, though. I'm a member of a credit union. I've got the best mortgage rates, the best car loan rates, the best relationship with my actual institution that I've ever had. And so while it's not a comfortable transition, it actually is the best relationship with your money that you'll have.
Thank you so much. So we have Assemblywoman Walker back with us. And before you close us out, I think there's an announcement I need to make. Join us here, tomorrow at 5 p.m. for the Black Tax, the cost of being Black in America. And this conversation is being led by author Sean D. Rochester. So please join us back here tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Thank you so much, Keith and Justin, and Assemblywoman Walker. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Sean. Thank you, Keith and Justin. This was amazing. And I think it's right in line with, I believe, the direction that we are going in as a people, as a nation. I'm excited. Keith, you mentioned cooperative economics. So I spent some time in Mondragon, Spain. And and basically that is a location where it's an entire society which is based on and built around cooperative economics, and it's working, it's thriving. And so a group of elected officials as MIT fellows, we had a fellowship that took us over to have that experience so that we can gain an understanding as to how to build that out at home for our own communities. So I look forward to continuing in this dialogue with you to figure out how we can begin to become more independent with our finances. And so again, please remember to come back and join us tomorrow. And of course, on Saturday, we have with Mojo Events their annual Juneteenth event. It's always a spectacular event. I can't wait for us to be back out into the streets in East New York, where there are a number of vendors and music and fun. But we will have a jam-packed and exciting weekend beginning tomorrow with the Black Tax. It's also election time. Of course, we always talk about being politically independent and empowered. Uh, the currency, if you will, of politics is your vote, and it's also you answering the census. So it's census time, it's voting time. Of course, it's always praying time. I just felt the need to go there. But election day is on Tuesday, June 23rd. We have until Sunday, the 21st, to do early voting. This is an impactful time where early voting is really starting to gain its own legs. And so we're just encouraging everyone to vote early, vote often, and vote safely. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.